Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Land Economy webinar. So this webinar is entitled Cambridge Land Economy, How to Show Cambridge You Are the Right Person to Handle £98 billion Problems. I'm probably wondering, what do we mean by that? But it's going to become apparent later on in this presentation. So who are we? My name is Parul. I am the founder here at the Oxbridge Formula, and we've been running the Oxbridge Formula for close to 7 years now. So why did I start the Oxbridge Formula? Well, I went to Oxford myself. I personally didn't study land economy, but I went on to become a teacher, and I realized that a lot of the application process, or a lot of the advice given to students for Oxbridge applications was very generic. And often the advice was given by an arts or humanities teacher. So sometimes the bits which are more scientific, and if you're doing land economy, there is going to be a fair amount of maths as part of your process. There's going to be interpreting graphs. There's going to be that side of things. That side was never really emphasized, and nobody was getting, well, a lot of people I found weren't getting the right advice for that. And a lot of the times in schools, people would get generic advice about choosing a college, but what about all this subject specific stuff you needed to do in order to make yourself seem like a really impressive applicant? So that was why we decided to start the Oxbridge Formula, to make sure that students in these types of subjects were getting really specific advice for them from experts, from people who have gone through that very same application process. I graduated with a first-class degree from Oxford, and then I became a teacher. And so we've helped hundreds of students through the Oxbridge Formula gain their place at Oxford or Cambridge. And you're going to see some of those successful applicants on the next slide as well. And then I want to introduce you to Chris. Chris, if you just want to say a quick hello to everyone. For some reason, you're not able to, maybe he's not able to unmute.
Sorry, you had control of my mouse. I muted him. Yeah, hi everyone.
Okay, yeah, so Chris is our lead tutor here at the Oxbridge Formula. He is very good at breaking down complex concepts into just really simply, right? He makes the complex seem very difficult. He's very, very knowledgeable and very humble as well. So it's obviously a real pleasure to have him on the team. And then I want to introduce you to Roberta. Roberta, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Roberta is our lead land economy tutor. Roberta, if you want to say a little bit more about yourself before we move on. She's going to be the main presenter on today's webinar, and you're going to be blown away by her knowledge, by her enthusiasm, and she's just a very, very impressive tutor. She's our lead economics and land economy tutor here at the Oxbridge Formula. Go for it, Roberta.
Hi, everybody. I'm from Northern Ireland, and I went to Cambridge University and matriculated at Fitzwilliam College in 1999, where I read land economy. I went on to do a master's. And a bit like Parul, I came into teaching, but unlike Parul, I went through the more scenic route. I went into chartered surveying, first of all, because that's one of the reasons I wanted to do land economy, because of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors exam exemptions, which I'll talk about later. And I then loved that for a while, but I decided to sell my soul and became a global markets banker and worked for Bank of Ireland for many years. And the recession in 2008, as all of you are probably aware, hit, and I faced redundancy. So I retrained as an economics teacher, and that's what I do for a living, plus all of the land economy and economics Oxbridge help. So I'm really excited that you're all here today, and welcome to all of our friends across the world. You're all really welcome. I'm not sure what time zone you're in, but it's brilliant to see you all, and we'll answer all your questions as we go through today. Thank you for coming.
Excellent. So we also have Jansu here. Jansu is our programs consultant. Jansu, if you want to say hi.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well.
Yeah, so throughout the webinar, we'll have opportunities for you to be able to book a free consultation with her. So do look out for that opportunity. And we've also got Ben, who's helping on tech, who currently has my face on his screen, but it's all good. Okay, so let's continue then. So can we go to the next slide, Chris? Okay, so these are just some of our successful, of our successful students who have worked with us and been successful at gaining a place at Oxford or Cambridge. So Cambridge Land Economy, what is this webinar going to be about? Firstly, we're going to be discussing what land economy is and what it certainly is not. Some people have those misconceptions. So we're going to be busting those myths. We're going to be looking at how competitive it is to study land economy at Cambridge. And then what are land economy tutors looking for? So we're going to be going through all the stages of the application process for land economy and figuring out how you can boost yourself at each of those stages in the eyes of the admissions tutor. And lastly, well, actually, this kind of ties into this point, getting ready for Cambridge, how to prepare your application and your interview, and all those questions that you were kind of discussing. We're going to be going through those in point number 4. Or looking at, sorry, before this. And then we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So keep all your questions ready. Put them in the Q&A box rather than the chat box, please. And if you put them in chat, it's likely that we'll lose them. If you put them in Q&A, it's much more likely they'll get answered at the end. So please do not put them in chat. Put them in the Q&A box. All right. So Roberta, take it away. What is land economy and what is it not? Whoops. Can we? Ooh. Dear me, can we go back a couple? Thank you.
Okay, so a lot of students don't want to do land economy and they're not sure what it is, but they think they want to do something like geography, but they're not sure if they want to do estate management, or is it more maths or accounting or law? They don't really know, but their dad's a farmer, or they think they want to go the less competitive route. This is what land economy is not. It is not glorified geography. So yes, if you have a passion for geography and that's your thing, go and do a geography degree. Land economy is only a small proportion of it is geography. It is not glorified farming. Despite the myths, despite the historical links that it has to agriculture, especially the estate of the crown, that's where the concept came from. It is not just about farming. Yes, we study agriculture. Yes, we study the Common Agricultural Policy, but it is not a farming degree. Likewise, it is not, just back a slide, it is not estate management. Estate management is very, very different, because in estate management, you only look after the valuation and the maintenance and lease renewals of an estate. And likewise, it's not property flipping. You don't buy a property, do it up and sell it on. That's not land economy, that's property flipping. So just to dispel those myths, yes, some of those elements comprise of land economy and we do study it, but that is not all that land economy is. So they are the reasons probably not to study it. If we just go to the next slide, this is the intricacies, going into the really granular detail of land economy. Please, please, please be aware it is a very multifaceted degree. And what I mean by that, if you're good at lots of things, this is a brilliant degree for you. If you do maybe 3 A-levels and an EPQ, or 4 A-levels or more, or if you do IB, the International Baccalaureate, and you've got some hires and some standard level subjects that you really enjoy, this degree will suit your skill set really, really well. For example, whenever we're looking at the foundation year of year 1, whenever you first go as a fresher, you'll be broken into various different modules and papers, and then you'll be tested on those at the end of year 1 in your exam. Now, in that economics exam, you will be studying macro and micro, and in that you'll be doing quite a lot of micro and macro application to farming, to agriculture, to Common Agricultural Policy, to European policy. We will be looking at the difference between the Fed, the central bank in Europe, and also the Bank of England. So we do hardcore economics. The second element of that first part of economics is if you do not do A-level maths, you can still get in to do land economy. However, whenever I first studied land economy, I didn't do A-level maths. And in my first week, we were all put into a group, those of us, about half of us in the course that didn't do maths. And we were taught A-level maths in a week. Likewise, anyone that didn't study economics at A-level was put into another group and they were taught A-level economics in a week. It was a difficult week, no doubt about it. So if you don't do it, be aware there may be a crash course for you to actually get a head start on everything else. That said, now that I've been through that pain, oh my God, it was really hard. Once you've had the heads up from me, you can now go online, you can attend lectures, you can do MOOCs, you can go to Pearl and say, Pearl, will you please help me with my maths? Go to Chris, say, Chris, can I get some extra tuition with you to help me with my maths so I can get into Cambridge, so I can succeed in my land economy degree? They are important. Likewise, in this paper 3 element that we do in year 1 in the Tripos, we do statistics and accounting, balance sheets, profit and loss, and your bell curve regressional analysis. If that is freaking you out a little bit, which it does, and I know some people don't like numbers, again, we are here to help. Parul and Chris and all the maths team, the TSA team, they are outstanding at what they do. Don't ask me about that stuff. I just struggle through myself, but we've got support there to help you. So please don't be afraid. Whenever it comes to the paper 2, that's when it gets very legal, and we look at the litigation of land law, constitutional and administrative law. We also look at the law of tort, and we also look at probate a little tiny bit, and mostly land law. So for example, how do we maintain planning regulations in the UK? What laws are there in place? If someone comes and squats on your land, how do we actually get them to be removed from a legal point of view? We look at judicial review, we look at the role of the state, we look at the role of sovereign, we look at the role of the constitution of the UK, and then apply it throughout the rest of the land and urban issues, not just UK based, although that is the foundation. We actually look globally and then start to compare it. And that's one thing that I personally find fascinating, comparing the land use differences and the land use policies and legal frameworks of different countries and what stage they're at in their development. Really, really interesting. And linking on to development, Michael Todaro and the economics of land economy and development, we look at sustainability issues. We look at sustainable farming and how it can now take us into the 4th industrial revolution. We also look at living standards, HDI rankings, and then once you do all that, and that will take you right up to the end of the year, you will be examined. You will have 4 exams minimum. They do not count towards your final Tripos. So your first year exams are all internal exams, sat in the Senate House in Cambridge, and then you have to go on to do your second year exams. And once you do second year, now that you're grown up and you've kind of passed that freshers thing, you then get to pick and choose, a little bit like a la carte. What shall I choose? What module shall I choose? And a lot of students tend to go for what they like. So if you do want to focus more on the finance and banking side, you'll go for the economics, finance and investment, for example. If you want to go and work for the United Nations and you want to do sustainable development programs in Bangladesh, you'll probably look at development economics. If you want to specialize and you're absolutely sure I want to go into conveyancing and tenant law and landlord, I will probably be looking at the tenant law aspect of paper 2. If you want to go into planning or work for the government, or if you want to become a civil servant, or if you do want to go out and go into the world of estate management or go into the world of valuations or the Chartered Institute of Surveyors, real estate is for you. Anyone that is really interested in this topic, have a look at the BBC iPlayer. They've got a brilliant, it's a mini series about real estate agents out in Dubai and what these young people do to try and make as much money as they can. It's really, really inspiring. It's not land economy per se, but it gives you an idea of what real estate might be. So as the years go on, you can pick and choose a little bit more of what your interests are. Okay, next slide. Right, this is where I'm going to be really honest with you, okay? I get students every year come to me to say, I want to do land economy. I say, okay, that's really cool. Why? Because it's easier to get into than economics. You'll not get in. Honestly, you won't get in. Don't do that. Don't do the numbers game. It is competitive. It is competitive. And I'll say that the last time, it is competitive. So trying to fool the examiners and trying to fool the admissions tutors to get in through the back door, it won't work. You have to display passion both on paper and in interview. And if you don't have that passion, you won't get in. Secondly, it says you don't have to work hard to get in. You don't need good grades. That's rubbish. Yes, you do. It's Cambridge University, for goodness sake. Oxford don't do it. Cambridge do. You absolutely need to nail your GCSEs, your A levels, all of your personal statement, any extras that you do, EPQ, essay competitions, and you need those top grades. You are in a globally competitive field. The next one is, well, that's fine. I do land economy. It's basically a farming degree. Remember the myths that I've just dispelled. I'll be able to go rowing every Saturday, every Sunday. I'll be able to go and get drunk on a Monday and probably not go to lectures on a Tuesday. Rubbish. It is an academically rigorous course and you will find it difficult. You will. You're probably, I'm guessing most of you that are on here today are probably Oxbridge candidates, otherwise you probably wouldn't be here. So you're above average. That means that you are now competing against all of those other above average people, which means you can't be complacent. And the last reason, that is a rubbish reason to study land economy as well, it's glorified geography. All you need is your colouring in pencils, colour in your map, and there you go. It's nonsense. Yes, there are geographical and geological elements, but that is not just it. Please do not apply for land economy, and please do not ask for our help if these are your reasons for doing it. I can't help you. You won't get in. However,
I just wanted to quickly show, in case you wanted to see how it is a competitive degree, land economy is actually more competitive than the average for Cambridge. So if you're comparing yourself to people applying for, say, well, say the average Cambridge degree, that might be like biological, natural sciences, English, history, sort of big degrees, it's more competitive than those. And to show the kind of grades you need, it's basically the same for land economy as for economics. Maybe there's a slight difference in the standard offer, but the grades people are actually getting when they, the grades successful applicants have when they apply, pretty much the same between land economy and economics. So the people you're competing against have very high grades, as it says, like 9 A's or A stars at GCSE.
Thank you, Chris.
Let's move on to the good reasons, Roberta.
Good reasons, yes. These are the reasons why to study it. Because you want to decide and keep your options open when it comes to careers. I'm currently in education. I've just said previous to that I was in banking, previous to that I was in chartered surveying, and I'm still actually deciding what I'm going to do when I grow up. That was a joke. No, I still don't know, because there's so many options with the land economy degree, and with the skill set that this degree gives you, you can do anything. Plus with the 2-1 from Cambridge, or if you're like Parul and you get first, you can do anything, like set up your own business. The other thing is you want to do something, you're not sure what, you know what your skill set is, but you don't know where to channel it. Again, with the a la carte options and the module options, you can then decide what you want to do. Human geography, yes, the social, economic and cultural aspect of human geography, that demographic stuff really does come into play with the economics solid base, and it does give you a really good reason to platform your interest in that and apply it to a global context. The other thing is looking at international, regional, national comparisons of land use planning, what happens both underneath the land and on the seabed, because we do look at that quite a lot. We do look at fishing stocks as well. It gives you such a brilliant platform to then go off and do other things. And again, it's not just theory. We do lots of case studies. We do actually go to court. We do actually go to the planning office. We do meet civil servants. We do actually go out and look at car manufacturing plants. So don't be expecting to be sat in a lecture hall the whole time. It is a lot of project based. It is a lot of group work, but at the same time, it's Cambridge, it's academically rigorous, and you will be worked off your socks. Again, a big one for me when I did it was about the sustainability and about trying to reduce global warming. One of the big modules that you'll do, and it is a big module in your second year, is called environmental economics. And I'm guessing some of you that do A-level or IB economics at the moment do a little bit of that already, your externalities, your market failure, your government intervention. That's where you take that stuff and magnify it. It's so interesting. And again, it's a prestigious degree. There's only one university in the world that does land economy, and that's Cambridge. Oxford don't offer it. There are alternatives in Russell Group and internationally, but they are not Cambridge. And having that in your CV, trust me, will open doors for you everywhere.
I just wanted to quickly read a quote from one of our land economy tutors who's a current student, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. But he said, I applied because it was one of the few courses that taught economics, but the applications of it rather than an entirely theoretical and abstract basis, like most of the other top unis do. We focus on things like urban economics, regional economics, development economics, and so on, which link with human geography, and I found it a lot more interesting. So as you can see, that ties in with the kind of breadth of the degree we discussed. how about what you do after you graduate, Roberta?
Well, whenever you graduate, the world really is your oyster. You can go anywhere and do anything. A lot of people in my class did not go the route that I went down. I went for the top left route with the Institute of Chartered Surveyors, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, and doing a land economy degree does get you exemption from some exams to become a Royal Institute Chartered Surveyor. So you can put those initials after your name, which is quite cool. I did that, but most of my economist friends, either one went to work for the United Nations, one went to work for the IMF. I think about 70% of what was left went into banking and finance. Two of us went into chartered surveying. I went into retail and went into looking after shopping centres and offices and did lots of valuation reports for that for a few years. One of my colleagues, she came from a farming background and she wanted to work up north, and she went into working as a chartered surveyor for much more rural landscape uses. So we did that. No one in my degree actually went into law. However, the year before me, quite a lot did go into conveyancing law. And at the end of their degree, they went on to do what's called an LPC, which is a conversion course to make you a qualified lawyer. But she then decided to qualify in law with the specialism of land and landlord and tenant. However, I do know quite a few colleagues that have now changed their career, as I have, and they're now working in wealth management, and one of which is now a senior town planner in, I think it's Coventry. So you can go anywhere and kind of morph your degree. So please don't think once you graduate, you have to be a surveyor. No, you don't. You've got options. And again, you'll probably have 3 or 4 careers by the time you retire, maybe more. So it will open options, and the networking availability is outstanding. As long as you keep in contact with people, it's really, really useful.
Great, thank you. Let me just read this quote from Cambridge. They say the department has one of the strongest records for graduate employment or further study across the university. I think this was from maybe 2 years ago, the most recent one, where they said 100% of respondents to the graduate outcomes survey were in work or further study 15 months after graduation. And they said it's a reflection of its focus on topics relevant to real-world problems and its emphasis on the development of a broad range of skills. And as it says here, like 94% of students leave with a 2-1 or a first.
If I can just pick up on that last point, Chris. Mm-hmm. Looking at these statistics, it looks brilliant. And I don't want you to think that the people that do land economy just get 2-1s or first because they're really clever. Well, yes, they are really clever, but there's 3 elements to this. I'm going to triangulate it a little bit for you. Number 1, it's full of clever people, and that means it's really competitive. Number 2, they all work hard. I know doing A-levels is quite scary and getting into Cambridge is scary, but once you're there, you have to work even harder. The third thing is the land economy department are extremely supportive on the condition that you are hardworking. They won't support you if you can't be bothered. So these statistics of getting 2-1s and first and all getting jobs and being able to get your top degrees, it comes with those 3 things attached. So if you're hardworking, if you're really clever, and if you want to make use of the support available and ask for help, you will be able to fall into this category and even get the stats up. So it does come with a kind of caveat at the bottom.
Great, thank you. If we have a quick look at what you might expect from median salary, these are the stats we have. So in particular, the average for Cambridge is, this is after 5 years of work. The average for Cambridge is 35,000, for land economy, 5,000 more than that. Then you can compare to, say, an average Russell Group University slightly further down. And just again to show what land economy students go into, I think it's interesting to compare land economy to economics at Cambridge, where, as Roberta says, you can see a lot of people going into banking and finance. You can see people going into, say, consulting in the public sector or public policy. And that could include international institutions like you mentioned. A lot of people do go into further study as well, which could be, say, a law conversion degree. So a lot of the people going into law might be here. And it is very similar to what you'd be going into if you were doing a pure economics course, with the addition of you have this ability to specialize in property a little bit more. But overall, you can see that your job prospects are fairly similar. Let's just talk about one more thing here, which is, okay, we've discussed what land economy is, why you might want to apply. Why is applying for land economy hard, Roberta?
It's hard because people don't know what it is, Chris. It's quite simple. I came across the alternative students prospectus for Cambridge University when I was younger, and I was flicking through it and I seen this land economy thing and I was like, what the hell is this? And I started flicking through it. I went to my business studies teacher and she goes, never heard of it. I went to my head of year, oh, I've never heard of that. No one really knew what it was. It was a bit like, you know, garlic in the 1970s in England. It was a bit foreign and people didn't really know what it was. People don't really understand it. So they tend to shun it, say, no, you better do economics. You know, it's got more maths and it'll get a better job out of it. And people didn't really know what it was. And that's why it's hard, because when you go to these people in your school, your family, your friends, and they don't know what it is either, where do you go for help? Because it's not something that you've studied at school. You don't study land and you don't study economy and putting the two things together. Yes, if you do geography and yes, if you do economics, you've got a fairly good idea, but still it's this kind of weird kind of triage thing, and that's why it's hard. Plus, trying to make your Cambridge personal statement fit this really kind of square peg, and you're trying to put, you know, round hole and square peg, and you're trying to make you fit into this. It's quite difficult because it's so different and it's so broad and unique. And applying for land economy is even harder because, well, what do you put into a personal statement for this? Because if it's maths, you put in that you've done a maths Olympiad, you put in you've done lots of MOOCs, you put in that you've done lots of maths competitions. Whereas for land economy, do you say young enterprise? Do you say I play for the rugby team? You know, I worked on a farm. What do you say? And this is why it's really difficult. And that's, Chris, what I love doing in our workshops is telling students, okay, this is what a personal statement looks like. What are you interested in? And then we can try and make theirs more personal and coach them the whole way through applying, interview preparation, workshops, and getting them totally up to speed with it. The other thing is, the interview, 75% of applicants will get an interview. That's the first hurdle. And once you get into the interview, what the hell do you say? What if they give you a problem that you don't know? Again, in our workshops, we do lots of practice questions. We do lots of practice workshops. We do lots of practice supervisions, which is the very intense way that Cambridge and Oxford teach. And it is intense. And I will make you sweat. It is difficult. And in those workshops, I'll give you some pre-reading and I'll ask you, you know, to have a little look at it, think about it, and then ask you what you would say in interview with people watching. So the rest of the group watch, and that's difficult because students at sixth form haven't been done that before, which is why applying for this course that you've never heard of, that nobody else has heard of, is so hard. And we're kind of here at the background with our pom-poms cheering you on, saying, don't worry, we've got it, we've got you, don't worry. Plus, finally, whenever you go to the library at school, there's nothing there. Whenever you go to the librarian or the careers teacher at school, usually they don't really know how to help you. And chances are, like me, I was the first person from my school to apply to land economy. And I think I was the first person in my town that applied to land economy, not that I've heard of anyone else doing it from where I'm from. And it's Northern Ireland, not Scotland, by the way. So we are here to help. Go onto the forums, they're fine. Go onto the chat rooms, they're fine. But if you want a specialist to help you that's done the course from a specialist Oxbridge background with proper tutors that know what they're talking about, we are here. So it doesn't make the application process quite as difficult and not as daunting. We break it down into bite-sized chunks.
Move on?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I did show these stats before, but just in the context of thinking land economy is uncompetitive is not a good reason to apply. But I just want to dwell a little bit more on, firstly, how few places there are. Like, as Powell said, there's basically 69 places for land economy in the country. Like, these are the 69 people each year who are studying land economy. And that's a 16% success rate. So that's roughly 1 in 6.
Yeah, in other words, 84% of people who apply are not successful at getting a place. So it's not an easy course. I think, as Roberta said, it's not easy to apply and get in.
Yeah, exactly. Most colleges do offer it. So some small courses you have to be restricted in your college. Most colleges do offer it. But it is going to be a small degree at any college you apply to. So a small course, there's going to be a few people doing it. And again, we'll just dwell on these stats I showed before, that the average offer holder, so the people who are actually getting offers for land economy, they tend to have 9 A's or A stars at GCSE. And the standard A-level offer is 1 A star and 2 A's. Although that's not necessarily what the average offer holder actually gets. They'll tend to overachieve. And if you're doing the IB, the standard offer is 40 to 42. It varies depending on college. But again, the people who are getting in tend to be scoring a little bit higher. If we just look at, well, we just looked at how competitive it is now. Like a lot of degrees at Cambridge, especially more mathematical or technical ones, especially economic subjects, the number of applications has been increasing. The number of places hasn't really been increasing. So
I guess, like lots of other courses, land economy is just becoming more and more and more competitive every year, right? So it might be even more competitive than 16% in 2022 or 2023 or wherever you're applying. So that's just one thing that's worth bearing in mind. What are Cambridge admissions test tutors actually looking for?
Okay, so as you can see here, we've kind of split this between what are they looking for in your application, and then what does the degree demand of you? And you might be worried about both those things when you're applying, although obviously you need to get in first. So the kind of immediate focus is maybe more what's on the left. Roberta, do you want to talk through these points, like what you want to see in students and what admissions tutors want to see in students?
Absolutely. Whenever you're applying, you can only get an interview based on your application. And what's on the page in your personal statement in your application is all that they have to go on. Your grades, your predictions, what your teachers and tutors say about you, plus your personal statement. So everything that's on there has to be absolute gold dust. What we are looking for, what all admissions tutors are looking for, is that you love the subject. You are passionate about land economy, and it has to almost jump off the page. So to show that, you probably want to be using words and fairly precise land economic related vocabulary. Like if you go to France, you speak fluent French. So if you're going, inverted commas, wherever that is, to land economy, you have to speak the language, use the buzzwords, not just for buzzwords' sake, but to show that you actually understand them. Things like the sustainability framework of Paris 2015 and how that links to COP26 and what are the differences in the policy. Show that you actually understand urban planning and its gentrification impacts from this 1970s. Show that you've actually read not just what your teacher tells you to read for your classes, but that you've actually read something because you wanted to. Perhaps you've done an essay competition or 2 or 3. By the way, you probably know this already. The Royal Economic Essay Competition, Royal Economic Society Essay Competition, the housing crisis, the John Locke Institute Essay Competition, the housing crisis. So if you want to show that you're really passionate about a land issue, have those type of things weaved throughout your personal statement. Whenever you're applying, it has to sing across your page. And then If you are an IB student, you'll probably already have done an IA, an internal assessment on something to do with a land economy related issue. One of my students has done one in Hong Kong, and how the housing crisis in Hong Kong has led to this phenomenon of cage homes and coffin homes. If you've never heard of it, Google it, it's absolutely terrible. How the overcramped issues of flooding in Bangladesh is actually causing deaths prematurely. How the air pollution issue in London is actually starting to kill people. The first legal case in the UK, you'll probably know about this anyway because you read about law and environmental law. That has to come across on your page. Plus, you have to be able to show that you are able to do maths proficiently. You don't have to be John Nash, but you have to be able to show that you understand various different economic and mathematical concepts, like why MC equals MR, like profit maximization versus sales maximization, why land use planning sometimes reduces land use issues, like dead land, inverted commas, the use of land whenever it's put into graves or other types of issues like that. Again, whenever you're actually in your degree, so once you've done your application, you've got your interview, you've got your place, you've got the grades and you're there, you have to be able to write. You will be doing on average about an essay a week. Bearing in mind the Cambridge and Oxford weeks are terms are very, very short. An essay a week is actually a lot. Please don't think that it's a little 2-page thing that you do in A-level. It's not. It takes a lot of work, a lot of reading, and you will be up late at night. I drank far too much Red Bull when I was doing this. But again, whenever you're writing, you have to be able to show an ability to put forward a coherent argument backed up by research, not just off the top of your head, backed up by lots of reading and synthesis that you've done. And to be able to use Harvard referencing, it's hard. I don't know anyone that likes Harvard reference. Well, I do actually. I know one person that likes Harvard referencing. But apart from that, it's really difficult. So in order to prepare you for that, you need to go online, do MOOCs, online workshops, essay competitions, your extended essay if IB, an EPQ on a land issue or an urban issue or something to do with sustainability. And again, do lots of extra work outside of the classroom. It's hard. It's hard. With respect, playing rugby is good. Playing an instrument or doing drama and everything is good, and that's important to put on your personal statement. But to be honest, it's an academic subject. They care more about the academics because they have to keep their league tables high. So they need bright students that are going to get 2 1s or first to make sure that we maintain that 94%. So let's crack on.
Okay, I'll just quickly discuss this slide, which is, some students ask, like, how important is it to be doing maths A level when you apply? The stats show, so this pie chart is looking at all the applicants to land economy. These are the people who got offers. You can see they're basically the same. So the proportion of your chance of getting in doesn't depend on whether you studied maths or not. Otherwise, the proportions would have changed. But as we just discussed, it is useful once you're at Cambridge. Economics is pretty similar. You don't need it, although it is useful. As Roberta discussed before, like, if you haven't done A-level maths or economics or IB or similar, you will have to catch up very quickly once you're at uni. And so it can be worth, say you have a tutor, it can be worth asking for tuition in maths or economic subjects. And what we're running these economics workshops, so it is worth getting some preparation in sort of core skills when you're applying. Let's talk about what you can be sort of reading and doing for your application, maybe some things you can mention in your personal statement. So we'll discuss quite a lot of books in a second. You can also read magazines and journals that could be online or in print, maybe relating to law, economics, and land use issues. You can listen to podcasts on the same kinds of topics. And as Roberta's already discussed, essay contests are a great way to practice your writing, do a bit of research. We showed the John Locke Institute essay contest logo here. The other one, Roberta, was the Royal Institute.
Royal Economic Society, yeah.
Royal Economic Society, sorry, yes. Rebecca, I don't know if you want to discuss just a couple of books.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'll bring some up on the
I
screen.
want to kind of break this into two, Chris, if I can.
Okay.
The first thing is, I do not expect students to go out and spend 500 quid on Amazon buying books, because that's the mistake that lots do, because they think if I buy lots of books and I throw them all into my personal statement, I'm going to look really clever. No, you don't. The first mistake is a lot of this stuff you can get online for free. Secondly, a lot of this stuff we can give you in our workshops as pre-reading for free as part of the workshop. So please don't go out and spend loads of stuff. Secondly, if you list loads of material that you've read in your personal statement, it looks like a list. It doesn't make you look clever, it just looks like a list. What is much more important is to be selective of what you've read. And I'm going to say something a bit outstanding now. Sometimes you don't have to read the whole book. You can just read a few chapters of a book. What I do when I buy a new book, I look at the contents page, look at the chapters that I'm most interested in, and read those first. That is the best way to get lots of insight from different authors. This book here in the middle is probably one of my favorites, Donut Economics by Kate Raworth. She's an outstanding economist, and she talks very much about development economics. So if you're interested in development, sustainability, demographic issues, and how to improve living standards, this is the book for you. The book over on the right by Joseph Stiglitz, The Price of Inequality, again, very centre left wing, much more about equality and why capitalism is wrong. And he's also won prizes in economics, writes very, very well, but has a very, very fundamental viewpoint. And again, if you like his work and you read it and then start to compare his work with Kate Raworth, and then say in your personal statement what you think about it, or in your interview what you've understood it to be, and have your own judgment, that's what they're after. Diane Coyle is a former she's a former Cambridge lecturer and professor. She's from Manchester University. I think she's back at Cambridge now, actually, and she writes quite a lot about how unpaid work isn't actually factored into our economy, and how if we did and had more equality for women, we would have a much bigger GDP. So I would recommend some of those authors. Another one, if you just go forward, Chris, is by Tim Harford. I don't know if he's there. And this one on the right, next slide again.
I don't know if we have, is it The Undercover Economist?
No.
No, I don't know if we have one.
It was the cities one. The Triumph of the City.
Triumph of the City.
That one, second from the left. The Triumph of the City by Edward Glasser. That is probably the most important thing to read between now and you press send on your application, that book right there. Anyone that I know that studied land economy has read that book at least twice. I've read it twice this year. I haven't studied land economy at Cambridge myself since 1999, I matriculated, so 2002. But I still read about it, and I read that book twice this year. It's outstanding, and they keep revising it. It brings in so much about land use planning issues, and it's even got COVID in there. It's got Donald Trump in there, and it makes you think of all of the different aspects that challenge global patterns to do with land use. So please be selective. You do not have time to read everything. Read what you are really interested in. So going back to those modules that I showed you at the start, if you really want to do something about surveying and land use in farming, then you would look at authors like that. If you want to go into banking and finance to do with property portfolio management, you would read more of that kind of thing. So be selective of what you read. And if you need more help of where to go for your reading, or what to ask your librarian at school to buy, or if you do want to throw some money and ask mommy and daddy to buy it for you, ask them nicely, or you could buy it yourself and be a grown-up. You can actually ask me and I'll tell you specific books that I think would really, really help you. But be selective is my main point.
Great, that's very helpful, thank you. Just to quickly, this is just a selection of pictures that you might see at some point in a workshop. Roberta, do you want to talk about these at all?
Yes, and I want to talk about the one in the middle. And it said at the start of our Zoom, £98 billion, and do you know what to do with it, and how would you better spend it? Most of you already know. that the HS2 project was budgeted, love that word, to be 98 billion. Chances are we're probably going to go over it by more than 10 billion. Remember how many zeros are in a billion? That's a lot. HS2 planning has been overlong, over protracted, and more costly because it creates so much pressure on land, because we need so much land to actually build on it. And remember what happens, land? It appreciates in value as time goes on. So the longer they take, the more expensive it becomes for compulsory purchase. That's when the government buys land from people without their wanting to, they just give them market rate. So by looking at HS2 in depth, and you'll do this in your degree as well, you do it in year 1, and by looking at why we need it, and then compare and contrast the planning issues that went into the actual execution of it before they've actually dug up any ground and laid any trains down or any tracks down, and then compare it to something like the maglev trains all throughout China and the rest of the world now with the Belt and Road Initiative. If you don't know the Belt and Road Initiative, that's a brilliant place to start with your reading. Google it, type in PDF, and you'll get tons of stuff. There's great documentaries in the Belt and Road as well from an international transport point of view. Comparing HS2, 98 billion, to what the Chinese have done with their infrastructure and why the Great Britain transport issue looks so terrible. What would you have done if you were finance minister, transport minister? What would you have done to make better use of taxpayers' money for that 98 billion? And it's a really challenging topic because there are so many opportunity costs involved and so many stakeholders. We need more transport. We need to get people out of cars, not just electric ones as an alternative, but we need more trains. How do you do it? Who funds it? Do you tax everyone? What about those people that will never use the train? What about the people in Scotland that won't even benefit from it? Never mind the people in Wales. Is it fair to tax everyone? You decide. And that's what case studies will be looking at. The one at the bottom left there with the high rises. Look at all that wealth. Look at those gorgeous views. Gosh, that looks lovely in Brazil, doesn't it? Oh, really fun. I could really do with a holiday there, Chris. But look in the foreground, all of the little huts, mud huts with sewage running through the streets in the favelas of Brazil. And they're all located on the hill. And none of these have property rights at all. None of these people are just squatters. And it's your job as the planning officer to try and incentivize them to get out of there. What are you going to do? What policy are you going to implement? Are you going to tax them, pay them, bribe them, kill them, replace them? This is something that all shanty towns and favelas or slums throughout the world, the governments are trying their best to move, help, and increase living standards for this people without putting a huge burden on the state or the taxpayer. And fiscally, it's really difficult. So before today's session, I asked you to have a little think about some of these issues. And I know probably some of you are dying to put your hand up and say, oh, I've got an idea, I've got an idea. Park it, keep that passion, and we'll talk about it later, okay, in our workshops.
Okay, well, do you want to maybe ask one question on each of these two topics?
Yes. The Leeds, the orange bit on the map from Leeds down to Birmingham to East Midlands, that was phase 2B, or not 2B, that was another joke, do you like it? Why they had that part of the HS2 plan, because this was part of the Northern Powerhouse, said Boris Johnson. About 6 months ago, he decided that he wasn't going to do it. And I just want to ask, does anyone know why? Why was this cancelled? Can anyone pop in the chat why you think this particular branch of the Northern Powerhouse programme, HS2, for phase 2B, linking the East Midlands right down to the West Midlands to Birmingham, the Northeast, because we could argue that's the place that needs it most, and they just scrapped it. I wonder, does anybody know why?
Just while you're answering, I just want to clarify. So there are actually two kind of chat boxes in a sense. There's the chat and the Q&A. So to answer Roberta's questions, please make sure you're putting the answers in the chat. And then if you do have questions for the Q&A later, you can put them in the Q&A box separately. So we'll maybe just pause for 30 seconds while answers come in.
If you get it right, wow, you're really clever. If you get it wrong, wow, I'll be able to teach you. It's fine. It's fine to have a go. Okay, about 10 seconds, folks. Okay, thank you for those that have popped in your answers, and you're all pretty much on par. Due to planning issues, due to the delays, due to the fact that HS2 planning went so protracted and so over budget already by phase 1, they literally ran out of money. Isn't it easy to borrow money? Yes, it is. Before a pandemic. So you've got this pandemic that hits, an economic shock, and government finances now went colossal. The debt to GDP ratio should be 40%. Our debt to GDP ratio now is over 104%. So we had no choice. We have literally had to park and just postpone that phase 2B. They will come back to it once they can rebalance the books and rebalance the fiscal pot. But at the moment, that was not the priority. The main priority was linking Birmingham to London. And many have argued that Northern Powerhouse thing that we were told about is now nonsense. And it does look that way from a land point of view, because we've got the levelling up strategy. If you don't know what that is, please read about it, and how that can reduce inequalities. But meantime, the areas of most inequality aren't actually getting funding. Oh, how do we solve this? Let's do it together in our workshops.
Okay, would you like to move on?
Yes, please.
We got one more example topic. So this one is about cohabitation. Roberta, what would you like to say about this?
Oh, it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. Who is going to have the rights? So you live with someone, and are you married? This is to do with your paper too, by the way, law and landlord and tenant law, and who has the right to reside, who has the right to claim, who has the right to evict. This is all about property law and property rights. So whenever you are cohabiting with someone, in other words, you're actually living with them, who has rights? If you break up and if you decide to actually sell the property or leave the property, who has rights to claim or get any use of or utility of that particular property? And it is so complicated. And remember, landlord and tenant law and land law is all on a case-by-case basis. It's not a blanket approach. Every single case is looked at with its own merits. And that's where your reading of case law and judicial law is so important. So for example, if you're married and living with someone, you then have to decide, if you are selling the house, is it more than £270,000? If it's not, then that's fine. And automatically, if anything happens to you, that will be inherited by the spouse or the partner. If you do have an estate more than £270,000, that will probably be given some to your spouse and some to your children. If you don't have a civil partnership and you're not married, and if you do have children, everything will be split automatically between the two. So whenever you live with someone, you have to make it very, very clear on paper who has the right to reside, who has the right to inherit. What rights are you foregoing if you reside with someone and you're not married to them for longer than 12 months? Who pays the mortgage, if there is one? Who owns the property, if there is ownership? Or who rents the property, whose name is on the lease? And there are so many unwritten implications when it comes to living rights and squatting rights and inheritance rights that we have to look at. Probably for this one case, you'd have to read about 20 other case laws on your reading list given to you by your law supervisor to actually get your head around, well, this case said this, This one in 1972 said this. However, Judicial Review in 1993 said this. So my judgment would be, and this context here would be an essay that you would have to do for your land economy. It is so complex. And you've got all of these options. Has this happened? Has this happened? Case law. Has everything been passed to the Crown? Have you got legal representation? Have you got a right to reside? And cohabiting and having a common law spouse are effectively the same, because you're living with someone, even though you're not married, but you've been living with them for so long, it's common law, even though it's not law. And if you don't know any of this, it can be quite daunting, which is why we look at it in our workshops and why you'll be doing it in your land economy interview sections and interview skills, to try and make the complicated really simple. And the answer is, having paperwork and having a paperwork trail is an absolute must when it comes to legality and litigation.
Okay, shall we move on?
Yes, please.
Okay, so
how important are the different aspects? So because there's no admissions test anymore, the interview all of a sudden becomes far more important. And then your personal statement and supercurricular activities, which you're going to put in your personal statement, also become really, really important. And I have put predicted grades in there. And that's because simply, if you do not meet the predicted grades, you will not get an interview. Like, that is just a pure cutoff. So it's important to have those predicted grades be at the minimum level, but you ideally want them to be higher than the minimum, because that's going to boost your application overall. Because everything has changed very recently, Cambridge have also said there is likely to be a submitted written work component, but the details for that haven't yet been released. But doing an EPQ and an essay contest could be very, very helpful in developing your essay writing skills. And Roberta, maybe you could talk a little bit more about the EPQ and essay contest just now.
The EPQ is the extended project qualification, which is the equivalent in A-level. And a lot of students do it in school, but some students actually do it independently, which you can do. It's a project base where you write a dissertation type project, usually about 4,000 or 5,000 words, on a topic that you're very interested in. It can be anything outside of the curriculum. Most students that do land economy tend to do an EPQ on something to do with a planning or sustainability or land use or fishing or agricultural or something to do with landlord and tenant law, anything that they are interested in from any part of the world. They then submit it, and then whenever you're actually doing that process, you learn how to research, you learn how to Harvard reference, you learn how to really be the expert in that topic. And once you're the expert in that topic, whenever it comes to interview, you can then show what you've learned, what you've read, and how you made sense of it and how you synthesized that information. It just gives you an extra little chink of armor in your interview to be able to show what you've done better than everybody else. Like, think about it. If you're against the best in the world and you've got an EPQ and they don't, automatically you're better. Likewise with essay competitions. Some students enter essay competitions and they put it down their CV. I entered an essay competition. Wow, would we do? The students that get prizes or get nominated for outstanding contributions to the essay competition or get the first or second or third prize, they look better than everybody else. So the better quality of essay competition that you do and the more insightful it is, plus if you get a prize, you just look better. But if you don't enter them and if you don't do the EPQ, your personal statement, your ability to come across that way in interview is fairly average in Cambridge terms. Average in Cambridge terms is above average everywhere else. But if you're average in Cambridge, your chances of getting in are middle. If your answers are better, it's much easier.
Okay, so how can you write a standout personal statement, Roberta?
How can you write a standout personal statement? You have to be able to show that passion. And I don't apologize for saying that word again. It has to show that you have understood, totally relished what you've read, and that you can make an informed judgment, make an informed choice of what you think you've read and what you understand it to be. Show those connections, those what we call logical chains of reasoning. I've read Paul Krugman, and he said that inequality can be solved through a universal program of credit. I've also read Diane Coyle and Adam Smith, who think a much more free market is better. And actually, from doing my EPQ on world markets of commodity trading, here's my judgment. This is what I think. So you've taken a mixture of reading from different viewpoints, done something with it, and then you say what you think. Wow, that comes across really genuinely, really sincerely, and it's individual to you. It's not just rehearsed, it's individual of your passion. Instead of just saying, I've read The Undercover Economist, I've read The Built Environment, I've read Economics Explained, I've read a new book out at the minute, why can't we just print money? Wow, you read. I know lots of English students that read. Wow, who cares? That's not enough. Next thing is that you are saying, I have great organizational skills, I've got great team working skills, I've got great communication skills. Okay, where have you displayed this? What have you done with them? Can you tell us about it? So don't just list stuff. Stuff is stuff. It needs to be applied. And if you start to write in very floral terms that I have been very extensively engaged in internships globally throughout the past 6 months, but you don't actually tell us what you've done in an internship. Flowery, waffly language is just what we call filibustering in the world of law and politics. It's just wasting time and wasting words. You don't have characters. You've got 4,000 characters in your personal statement to get this across. Every character, including spaces, counts. And the last thing is, don't start writing about mate or informally or you, or, you know, it has to be a formal application. So use fluent language. So please don't fall into those mistakes, but I'll help you with all that anyway as we go through the process.
We got some examples here. Roberta, would it help if I read the personal statement and you point out the bits you want to talk about?
Yeah, that'd be great, Chris. Thank you.
Okay, the student says, the role of government intervention is often questioned in the IB economics course. One example was in regards to the EU housing market, where perspectives varied. My unique take revolves around private-public partnerships, or PPP, in urban development. The synergies are highly efficient in maximizing firm expertise and maintaining affordability through subsidization. I drew inspiration from the UN Habitat's analysis of a housing development in Toronto, in Canada, called Regent Park. PPP was the ideal solution where risk was shared, management proved effective, and the local community was constantly consulted. Inevitably, there were trade-offs in economic decisions. The rather lengthy temporary relocations made commuting a challenge for many individuals. Fortunately, as tenants happily moved back to Regent's Park, it was clear that the project was motivated by revitalization rather than gentrification. So what would you choose to highlight here?
Gorgeous personal statement. Number one, it's written very well and it's been checked for punctuation, grammar, and any literacy issues. Number two, it's got fluent issues to do with economics and land use. The word Regent's Park, it's applied. Gentrification is a land use issue. Public-private partnerships, you're coming in with the state and kind of policy issues. Subsidization is a form of government intervention. So this is cram-packed, and it's not even that many characters. It's cram-packed of reading, application, an international context, and the student then at the end talking about what have the trade-offs been from their point of view. And it literally shows a student that's got a little bit of interest in something, I drew inspiration from, and then they go on to look at an issue because they were inspired. Passion in your face. And that's important. So that's gorgeous, gorgeous. They've looked at a project and expanded on it. Really lovely.
I just wanted to add, like, all through these, you'll see, as we discussed before, one of the things that makes applying for a land economy difficult is you're only applying for land economy at one university, but you might be applying to 5. So you maybe don't want to say, okay, in land economy, I'm going to study X, Y, Z. So you'll see that all of these are referring to kind of land economy themed topics. And I think Roberta's going to point out some more of those on subsequent slides without necessarily using those words.
Exactly. Don't shoot yourself in the foot and use the words land economy in your personal statement, because you will be applying to other universities. So it does have to be land economic related without those actual formal bits. Again, look at the engagement here of the light green. It shows where they were inspired to read. How do we make the world prosperous, fair, and environmentally sustainable? They've started off with a rhetorical question by Jeffrey Sachs. Gorgeous. It brings in then a little bit of Michael Trudaro's reading on sustainable development. And that led this particular candidate to explore. They were passionate to go further and expand on their reading. So they did. And then whenever they're trying to find so they find a problem, second paragraph, they're trying to find an answer to the problem. I took an online course. This is a student that's done above and beyond by themselves and put more effort into it. And they were introduced to some particular concept. I would probably go a stage further there and say, and what has that introduction to urban nature innovation pathways taught them? They joined auto trade market development as a project manager. Oh, have they? They've done an internship, they've done some work experience, and they then talk about what has happened in other international parts of the world. So they have taken their passion, shown inspiration to do more work, joined an internship, and then said what they have actually thought about it and how it can impact on urban green projects. So again, look at what they've read, look at what they've done with it, and then apply it to a context in the workplace. It just reads really well, plus it's fluent terminology. One of our favorite books, The Triumph of the City. I know it's on your to-do list already. The Triumph of the City, and shows what they have learned about a particular act of parliament, environmental economics and environmental law, paper 1 and paper 2. And they then go on to talk about what has happened as a result of them reading that. They were in the Model United Nations, they went to the G Summit 20, the German Transport Department, and they had to act as the transport minister and put forward their argument about construction projects. Gorgeous when it comes to, sorry, I'm using the word gorgeous far too much, repetitive. Don't be repetitive in your personal statement. It comes across as being very fluent and also very international in concept. Now, this is where you're bringing in stuff outside of academia, looking at MUN, a Model United Nations extracurricular activity. And this has made me wonder whether economics and environmental protection are at odds. And then we could look at investigating further to show what it's taught you, what has given you insight, and also where you want to go next to learn more. So those 3 personal statements kind of show the passion, the reading, the working, the inquisitive nature, and their thirst to learn. It has to come across. You want to learn. Don't show arrogance or that you know everything. You don't. Show the ability to be taught. This is what I've done. This is what I've read. This is what I understand. This is what I want to do next. Woo! It looks exciting. And that's the way you need to come across on the page. Show that passion.
Okay, thank you. We have one more here, which is actually from an SAQ, which we should maybe just explain. So, Roberta, do you want to talk about the SAQ?
Yeah, the SAQ is your ability to make a little added extra. It's like a little tail on that you can give. So supplementary information.
I think it's called a supplementary additional questionnaire or the supplementary application questionnaire, something like that. I can't remember the exact words. Yeah.
And it's your ability to show anything that you didn't have room to do in your personal statement. And what I sometimes tell students to do is to show something that is very unique. So it's like this little bonus section where you can show something that you've done in a particular school project, in a particular society that you've launched, in a particular book that you've read and what you've done with that reading. And some students really use this to show why they are so the right candidate. I always tell my students, this is where you put the cherry on the cake. This is where you show you're better than those other 66 candidates that are waiting for their place. And looking now, the second paragraph here, the modules and fundamentals of finance and investment and the modules in advance. This candidate has went on to the land economy Tripos, picked out a couple of modules that they're really interested in, those a la carte module options. And they've said, these are the things I want to study. This is what I want to do my third year dissertation on, these topics. And because I'm so excited about these optional modules, I'm now reading this, and this. Look at the reading that they've done. And they're also going in to look at other modules to try and help them solidify their understanding of what they're really passionate about. This is individual, this is strong, and this is also showing a student that's really well prepared. So in your SAQ, it's your ability to show that you do go above and beyond, that you are better than everybody else, and that why you deserve your place. So again, try and show module aspects, your goals, what you want to do. Like one student 2 years ago put down what they wanted to do as a career, and they wanted to go to, I think it was South Columbia, and they wanted Columbia, and they wanted to work for the family business out there in real estate management, but also expanding the portfolio away from retail into much more office and residential. And they said, this is what I want to achieve. Here's my career trajectory, and this is how this land economy degree is going to help me get there. And that's gorgeous, really, really insightful, but it shows the plan of academic route to get there. So that's the kind of thing that you can put as the add-on for your personal statement. So it's important to keep that in mind. You've got your personal statement and the SAQ. The SAQ is the gold dust.
It's worth noting that only Cambridge see the SAQ, which is why we can say, now we can mention the words, land economy. We can talk about specific modules in it.
Yeah, I just want to add, yeah, in case people don't know what the SAQ is, you can do it for every subject you're applying to at Cambridge, but it's the personal statement part of the SAQ is optional. And I would kind of encourage you to use that space if what you're going to write in your SAQ is different to what you're writing in your personal statement. And land economy is a prime example of that, because you're applying to 4 different subjects, because land economy only exists at Cambridge. So your main personal statement is going to be a bit more general. So the SAQ is an ideal opportunity to talk about land economy specifically. Okay, land economy interviews. Let's just talk about these. So they are not a job interview. I have to be so specific in saying this, because a lot of people think that they're going to be asking you why you want to do land economy and what your key strengths are, and that's not what it's going to be like. The reason Cambridge interviews in the way that it does is because that they teach in supervisions, right? So they teach in small groups where it's you and maybe 1 or 2 other students, and you are expected to participate in that session, and you're expected to be teachable. So because that's how they teach, the interviews emulate that format, and you're going to be asked academic questions. You're going to be asked to take the kind of thing that we looked at earlier and discuss it. So what might an interview task look like? So let's look at these, and Roberta, if you could give us a bit more information about these. Oh, well, I mean, I can do this bit. So, you could discuss a little bit more about something you've mentioned in your personal statement, comment on an article you were given to read just before the interview. What kind of things could you be asked on the article? What were the writer's key reasons for making this argument or for arguing this point? Do you agree? And if not, why not? And if so, why? Comment on an unseen issue from an economic or legal standpoint. So, for example, what are the pros and cons of carbon taxes? And then logical problems. So this is what I was mentioning is something that we're going to be doing in our summer course. So 2 inheritors of an estate might disagree about which parts are most valuable. How can they split it fairly between them? So Roberta, is there anything you want to add to that, or should we move on?
Just one thing about the interview. And you're absolutely right, Pearl, to say about, it's not a job interview. What an interview, land economy or otherwise is, it's an exam. It's an oral exam. So when you walk in to when you walk out, you're being tested. So if you think about the questions that they'd be asking you written on paper, your answers have to be better quality than what you would write on a page. So one of the best land economy questions I heard of was a student had just arrived, and the interviewer said, "Oh, can you tell me about your journey here today?" And the student basically said, "Yeah, my mum dropped me off," instead of talking about all the transport issues and all of the land use issues that they faced actually on their journey. So every question is subtly talking about the land economy issues, and every answer that you say has to be orally absolutely perfect, which is why in school you do practice essays, you do mock exams, you do essays for homework and for prep every week. You practice so that your writing gets better. In land economy workshops, you practice saying it orally, so that whenever it comes to your oral interview, you're really good at it and you don't run out of time and you don't go over and you structure your answers properly. That's what a land economy interview is. It's an oral exam, and you can't practice it in school if no one's there to help you. That's why we are here to help you. So don't be
and even if you can practice in school, I think it's when you're doing it with a teacher that you're very familiar with, it's not the same experience as having it with somebody that you're less familiar with. And when you work with us, we give you, obviously you might be working with Roberta in the weekly sessions, but in mock interviews might be with another tutor. So you always got that unfamiliarity, which kind of emulates the real thing really well. Okay, let's move on. So what are interviewers looking for? What are the key attributes, Roberta, that you would say are necessary for an effective interview?
I would sum this up: teachable. You have to show that you have a certain amount of base knowledge, that you're bright. Obviously, you wouldn't be in the interview if you weren't, but you have a certain amount of base knowledge and that they can help you build on it. So if they do present you a problem and you haven't got a clue what to do, if it's an equation or if it's a particular, transport issue, and you don't know what to say, they will give you a little prompt. They will give you a little hint and see, can you now work it out? If you haven't got a Scooby-Doo with that, then they will give you another little hint to see if you can work it out. The more hints they have to give you, obviously you're diluting your chances of getting in, but they will help you to show that skill of teachability, because at the end of the day, the person interviewing you is the person that's going to be one of your lecturers and supervisors. So they want to work with you. And if you show that you're arrogant and that you know absolutely everything, you're not going to get a place. Likewise, if you show that you're too scared to put your hand up or even discuss something, you're not going to get a place. So it's getting that fine balance. You have to be able to articulate your answer in a way that's understandable, but also in a way that if you do get something wrong and they do challenge it, that you can say, oh, actually, I didn't think about that. Sorry, if I factored that issue in, I would say that my answer will probably change by 5 years, and we shouldn't have that planning consent for the next 5 years because of what you've told me. So to show that ability to change minds, to be teachable, and to actually then use the information that you're given to show further clarity. So the interviewers are looking for all of those skills, and it's difficult. It is difficult.
Okay, excellent. Shall we move on then? So what are some example interview questions, Roberta?
Love these. What's your opinion on compulsory purchase orders? And if you don't know what a compulsory purchase order is, instantly you break into sweat. You're like, oh, I don't know. But they will tell you, don't worry, a compulsory purchase order is when the state buys land or property or any sort of domestic dwelling or commercial dwelling for the use of the government. They will give you market value at that particular sector. And do you think that's okay? Do you think that's fair? And then you'll have to give your opinion. If you've never read about compulsory purchase, you have to think about this, and they will guide you as you go through. One of my favorite questions is obviously about HS2. Instead of spending it on 98 billion in HS2, what should we be spending it on? What's the opportunity cost? Should we be spending that on the healthcare system? Should we be spending that much more on green technology to reduce plastic and carbon? Or one of my favorites there, land economist and the region that you live in, what could you say about that? Well, I live in Dudley and there's a cinema close to me, and they want to hear about the land use issues, the land use prices, the land use values. Have you read about it? No. Have you read any books on it? No. Your answer is going to be less than average, which is why it's so important to read widely, different journals, different news, different articles, and discuss it in our workshops. So these questions, my first question by Professor Grant at Clare College in Cambridge was, Roberta, apart from profit, what are the main objectives of firms? I nearly choked. I didn't know what to say. And he then prompted me and said, well, some firms are trying to survive. Some firms might have other altruistic manners. Can you give me some examples of what you might think? And then I was able to answer it. But that first question, I choked. Now, I still got my place, but I did need a little prompt. But as long as that prompt helps you, because I had read so much about different objectives of firms, I just froze under the pressure. So that's where practicing helps.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. So moving on, I believe we're going to be looking at this example interview question, which is what rights should I have against people flying drones over my house? So what do we want to do here? Do we want to see what people put in the chat in terms of what their thoughts are? Roberta, is that good?
Yes,
Good?
please. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So everyone who is watching, I'm expecting quite a few responses to this. What rights do you think you should have against people flying a drone over your house?
Brill, can I just add in there?
Yeah.
Of all the times we've asked people to put in the chat, and lots of people aren't, to be honest, if you don't participate in a supervision at Cambridge, you get looked down upon. So this is your opportunity now to really answer your question. It doesn't matter if you get it right or wrong, it's just participating and showing what you think. So it's important to take part. So please, please, please put your answers in.
We might have some parents, even if you're not necessarily applying yourself, feel free to participate as well. Just get involved. Okay, let's see. We have somebody here who's talked about air rights. We've got somebody there talking about privacy. The immediate airspace above your house should be private, so intrusive drones should not be permitted. Any more for any more? It depends on the use of the drone and the entity that is operating it. Okay, good. Adding some nuance, I think. Is that the right word? Okay, any more? I'll wait 10 more seconds. See, oh yeah. No footage should be taken of my property, somebody says. Does the weight of the drone influence its legislation? Permission should be requested if the drone uses a camera footage of a property. There should be a regulated distance above your house and land at which the drone can fly. Footage should not be used for commercial purposes or shared. Should be protected against any kind of drones on your private property. All right, Roberta, do you want to take it away?
Very good, very good. I suppose before we answer this question, we need more information. And this is what I would say in an interview. So the question itself is quite open. And when we mean by rights, do we mean property rights or do we mean legally enforceable rights? And when it says people flying drones over my house, are these people residential neighbours? Are these people working for the government or a secret agency? Are they working for a foreign government? And what is the purpose of them flying a drone over my house? If it is for commercial use, then absolutely. I think it would be fair and reasonable. Nice words, fair and reasonable. In law, they are very important, that I should be informed and being able to give my informed consent. Likewise, what country are we in? Is this the UK? Because the UK land planning law is very different than if we were in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Because I would be fairly confident that the land use rights and flying drones over a house, whatever that is, in the Democratic Republic of Congo would be very, very different. And what rights should I have? In other words, what can we do to enforce our rights? And just because you own a piece of land, that doesn't automatically, by the rule of land registry, mean that you own everything above it. It just means that you own that piece of land and the property on it. So when we're talking about property rights, you don't own the land, you don't own the air, you only own the land. So is this invading your personal space or privacy? Define privacy. Is this invading anything to do with noise pollution? If it's not, does it matter? Is this visually polluting? And likewise, are any of your other rights to a peaceful life being compromised? So before we answer this question, what rights should I have? We need so many more pieces of data. And the rights would then be determined by the answers to those questions that we've asked. So private property is one thing. Who owns the house is another. If you are renting a house, does that change the answer? I would probably argue yes, because if you're renting and you're visually impaired, and now you've got much more noise pollution, but you don't own the house, that would change. And what do we mean by rights? What kind of rights do we have? The right to enjoy, the right to reside. So we need loads more information, and then we would be able to make our case. So in your interview, I would say all that. Sorry, in my interview, I would say all that, and then say my judgment would be dependent on these factors. Hopefully at that point, the interviewer would then give you some context and you could then work out your answer. So if this was the UK, if the drone was for commercial use or recreational use, I would probably state that that should be enforceable and we should have public property rights which are in line with land use rights, and we can then take them to court if they are breaching that and have a fine or some sort of punishment. If it was in a different country and if it was for a different purpose, obviously those enforcement rights would change. Can the law change? Absolutely. So a tough question, tough question. Hopefully some of you got a few bits from that. Thank you.
So getting Cambridge ready, what should I be doing now? Who wants to talk about this? Roberta, will you look at this?
Sure. You should be starting now. And if you're in the middle of exams, brilliant. You can still watch documentaries like the Amazon Prime, Eating Our Way to Extinction. It's all to do with environmental issues, all to do with global warming, and that'll help you with your exams anyway. What else can you do? Go on to Google and start looking up some issues that you're really interested in, or probably more importantly, go onto the Tripos and find some modules that you're interested in. Find the professors that are teaching the modules, find what they research and start to research that. So you can then put in your personal statement, oh, I'm really interested in wheat farming in Russia and how the COVID-19 pandemic has changed international wheat prices, because you know someone at the college that you're applying to is an expert on that. That's forward thinking. If you're really interested in banking, go onto the Bank of England website, the Bank of China website, or the European Central Bank, and look at some of the key issues that are facing them and start to learn the stats. Next thing, get active. You've got a holiday coming up. Get your CV ready, use your school networks, use your parental networks, and ask. Be, as my mother would say in Northern Ireland, have a brass neck. Start asking people, can I come and do an internship with you? Can I do 2 days shadowing? Can I work in your office? Having those names on your CV and having those names of internships and work experience in your personal statement makes you look better than everybody else. Essay competitions, entering 1 is good, entering 2 is better, entering 3 is wonderful, and winning them is outstanding. Increase your chances, increase your probability. And the other thing is not only read and watch interviews and watch TED Talks. Economics Explained is a brilliant YouTube clip for many documentaries about economics and land use, likewise infrastructure projects, but talk about them. Talk to your friends, talk to your parents about it and what you've actually found out. So that's what you should be doing now. Be active. Even if you're in the middle of your exams, you've still got a phone, you can still put some contacts out there. Be active.
Okay, yeah, fantastic. So how much work is actually required? Now, you remember Roberta saying at the beginning, you've got to do a lot of work to get in, and you've got to do a lot of work when you get there. Now, what do we mean by a lot of work? So if you were to join our program, we ask all of our students to do a minimum of 5 to 6 hours of additional work per week during term time, following a structured study plan. So that is something that we give you. A lot of the times people, when they're applying to Oxbridge, the bit that scares them the most is they just don't know what they're supposed to be doing. They're kind of like, oh, like searching around for resources or going, what should I be doing? Or trying to have the right discussions, whatever. But this brings everything into a structure so that you're not wasting your time looking for this stuff. You're just spending your time doing effective preparation. Okay. So what might this look like? Chris, can you talk us through an example timetable for somebody who might be applying for land economy?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, you can see the workshops won't necessarily always be on the same dates, but we've got an economics workshop and a social sciences workshop this week. And importantly, the students noted that there's pre-reading to do for the social sciences workshop. We'll actually show in a second how you find out what that pre-reading is. But there, so Roberta might have set everyone an article to read on the case study she wants to talk about in the workshop. So you'd want to do that, say, the evening before you come, so you have a chance to think about it beforehand, and maybe even do some writing, make some notes. This student's also been reading some book chapters, so like one of the books we had in the previous slide was How to Do Things with Rules, like an introduction to law. So maybe they're reading a chapter of that and making notes on it. Then they're going to have tuition on a Saturday. Before that, they might have been given some interview practice questions to think about, kind of like we gave you one to think about today. So they could be preparing for those the night before, and then they've got the tuition sort of midday Saturday. And then perhaps they're doing a statistics MOOC. So to get on top of their stats knowledge, so they're doing a chapter of that and an assignment, because the best MOOCs are the ones where you have where it gives you work to do. You're not just listening to lectures, you actually have to do some questions. So it's worth setting out time to do that as well. And this is just an example of various things you might be doing throughout the week. There might be more reading, there might be more questions depending on you and your tutor.
Lastly, we come to the Q&A. So far there is only one question that somebody has put into the chat. Any more for any more? While other people are booking consultation here, put your questions in the chat and we will get Roberta to answer as many of those as possible. But I will ask the one that is currently in the chat right now. Somebody says, does it matter if you do 4? So Nicole, I've got a question for you. Are you applying for land economy? If you just let me know, because you've asked this question. But is it for land economy or is it for another subject? Just quickly let me know. And is there anybody else that has a question? If you do, ask it right now. Otherwise, I think that brings us to the end. So any last minute things that Jansu you want to say to add in?
I mean, I think Roberta and definitely made it very clear what kind of program do we provide here. In the consultations, I always say to students, this isn't a come in and listen type of lecture. We want you to come in and actively participate, because that's what's going to make you successful at the interview stage. And I mean, you see Roberta's enthusiasm. I think that speaks on its own. So yeah, I'm looking forward to speaking with you guys in the consultations.
Okay, excellent. Somebody's got a question here that says, hi, thank you for the detailed presentation. I've taken media, history and economics as my A-levels. I've seen a steep learning curve in myself, especially from GCSE. Due to the pandemic, I believe I couldn't fully portray my true potential in my GCSEs. Given this, do you think I have a fair chance of admission if I meet the requirements for my A-levels, EPQ, supercurricular activities, internships and personal statement? I have a sincere interest in the modules that you have touched upon. So before anybody else answers that, I quickly want to say that Oxford and Cambridge have said that they are going to take GCSE results with a pinch of salt if you were affected by, the pandemic, the lockdowns, etc. So I wouldn't necessarily I wouldn't necessarily be worried if you believe your GCSEs were lower than they should have been, as long as you can make that up with your A-levels, you do have the right predicted grades and so on and so forth, and of course go on to show that you're highly impressive in interview and personal statement and so on. That's just one thing I wanted to add there, but if anyone else has anything to add, I'll just remind you that the A-levels were media, history and economics.
Well, I want to say, so Oxford have explicitly said, and I'm sure Cambridge believe the same thing, that what they want to see is progress from your GCSEs to your predicted grades, and then you actually achieving your predicted grades.
Not just progress, but sorry, I was just going to say not just progress, but it does have to meet the offer. That's important.
Yeah, so your predicted grades, obviously, I'm guessing this person, because I think this person just saying their GCSEs are not to the level of their other study. So I'm guessing your predicted grades are at a high enough level. In which case that in itself shows progress, and also your teachers will be able to comment on why they believe you'll meet those predicted grades in spite of your GCSEs, which should be enough for, I don't say it's enough for Cambridge to ask you to interview, but it's enough to counteract your GCSE grades potentially.
Okay,
on the actual subject matter, media, history and economics seem to make sense to me as head of all subjects for land economy.
Did you want to add anything, Roberta?
I think my biggest concern about your GCSEs would be the English and maths. And if they are subpar and they are sub-average, then it's probably worth getting your teachers at school to enhance their comments about you and why you underperformed and why your predicted grades are now a lot higher. Media, history and economics, that's okay. And there's no average real, combination of the triangle of subjects to do land economy, and the fact that you do economics and history show that you can write well. Just be aware there's no maths there, which is fine, but you will be put in some math situations which you may find slightly more difficult. So for you, I would probably say, Andrew, it's probably a good idea to do a little bit of maths extension this year to try and enhance your stuff. Plus, make sure your EPQ is land economy related, and all of the super curricular activities and personal statement and internships is very land economy focused. Because if you're starting from a back foot, you almost need to overcompensate. But I think your subjects are fine, and your GCSEs should be fine if you get your school support.
Okay. And then we've also got somebody asking, does the land economy course look at specific foreign regulations?
Yes, they do. They look at India in particular. They look at Democratic Republic of Congo. They look at Asia, China, Sri Lanka, and America. And they compare a lot of what we do in the UK to Europe. So absolutely, yes, we do.
Okay. All right. And then somebody's asked, being an international student, having IGCSE English as my first language.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, I think I'm going to say, do I still have to sit the IELTS result? Do I still have to have an IELTS result to prove my English? I think it depends which country you're in, actually. So let us know what country you're in. But I would say that you probably do still, if you have a GCSE in English, you might not need to. I think you're probably going to have to do some further research. I think it might even depend what country you're in. So yeah. Okay. All right, and then lastly, we have, doesn't matter if you do 4 A-levels, most applications are based on 3, even if you do 4. So when you say by does it matter, does it mean like, is it a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's not going to be a bad thing to do 4 as long as you do well, as long as doing 4 doesn't compromise your grades. I think that's a good thing. And it's, if you can get 4 good grades, then it's obviously going to make your application stand out even further. Okay, I think that's it for the questions. So hopefully that's been extremely beneficial. I'd love your feedback at the end, actually.
Can I just I wonder if the person who asked about the 4 A-levels is asking whether the offer depends on all 4 A-levels. And the answer is no, it is still based, it's like your 3 best. It can depend on the college, like they can say, okay, we want you to get at least an A in economics if you're taking economics, if they really want to say that. Yeah, it's just based on 3.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So yeah, quickly in the chat for those of you who are here, what did you think went well about this webinar, and what do you think we could improve further? That would be great if you could add that into the chat, so we can just keep improving these webinars and making them as useful for you as possible. That would be amazing, thank you. So I'll just wait, and then we're going to wrap up very shortly. Okay, nobody is putting anything into the chat. I think you're probably tired. All right, well, never mind. I'll just wait like a few seconds in case somebody's typing and they're like.
I think people are writing in the Q&A instead of the chat by accident.
Oh right, okay, fair enough.
Or maybe not. Maybe they're actual questions.
It was greatly informative. The on advice is much appreciated. Give us a clear and focused direction towards the next step. Somebody's written there. So yeah, in the chat, please. GCSEs in Hong Kong, but currently studying in the UK. I think if you study in the UK, but you are an international student, I don't know, actually. I honestly don't know the answer to that. I think it'd be best to check with the university to make sure you get the right answer, to be honest. I don't want to say something to you which isn't the correct answer. If you do a diploma on the side, would that enhance your chances of getting in? Roberta, any thoughts on that?
Sorry, what was the question?
If you do a diploma on the side, would that enhance your chances of getting in?
I think that would depend on the diploma.
Yeah, what would the diploma be on? And somebody says they're almost at the end of their EPQ, it's more to do with the law, how gender and racial inequality impacts the outcome of a trial, would that still be relevant for my personal statement?
Not overly, to be honest. I think the skills that you learn in your EPQ would be really good, but it's not an overly overt land economy topic. So if you're writing about your EPQ and what you've done, show that your research skills, your ability to think independently and synthesize data would be it, but I wouldn't really overwrite about the topic itself.
Okay, good. Right, guys, we're going to end it there. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for your time, and good luck for your land economy applications. And I look forward to seeing some of you on our program and in our consultations. All right, take care. Bye, everyone.